When I was younger, my parents would tell me stories about these rich people that they knew that all got rich by investing in real estate. But when I started out, I was all alone and I didn't have a mentor. I've been investing for a little over 2 years now, and I just want to teach you some of the secrets that I wish someone would have told me before I started. It would have been nice to have a mentor, but I had to do it alone. Had I known these tips before, they would have saved me years and years of feeling overwhelmed and confused and having no clue what to do. All you got to do is take them seriously and take action on all of them to get started investing ASAP and making passive income sooner. So when I was younger, I was fascinated by all these stories of these rich people, but I never thought that it was possible for me to do this. I still wanted to make a boatload of money, so I still went to college to become a software engineer because I heard they had really good salaries. Literally on day one of my first job, I realized, holy crap, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. The last thing I wanted to do was sit behind a desk. I'm actually sitting behind a desk right now, but a desk that I didn't own at a place that I didn't want to be all day, spending half of the day pretending like I was working just to kill time to make it seem like I was productive, and the other half of the day maybe actually getting something done. It just wasn't clear to me why that was the norm, why that was normal. What I wanted to be able to do was to have the flexibility to be able to say, I'm gonna stop working at 2 and maybe go play ping pong with a couple of friends, or just go grab lunch or something, come back a few hours later, get a little bit more work done, then end for the rest of the night. What I wanted was to be able to control my time and life, where I didn't have that when I had to show up somewhere Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, no matter what. So it got me thinking, I still need to make money, but I need to just figure out another way to make money that wasn't at a job. And that's when I started actually learning about real estate investing. That night, I went home and I started looking up all these different ways I could start making money with real estate. Immediately, I was overwhelmed. There's flipping, there's wholesaling, there's rental property investing. You could become an agent. I was unbelievably overwhelmed. And this leads me to my first secret. You absolutely need to be clear on what you want. You need to be clear on what you want from the beginning as an investor. So if you remember, the whole reason why I wanted to invest in real estate in the first place was to start building a passive income stream. This way I could do what I want. But when I started hearing about all these different strategies, I had no actual clue which one was the best. I got all caught up with the pros and cons of each one that I forgot why I even started doing this to begin with. I wanted to build passive income. And so there was only one strategy that really allowed me to do that, and that was rental property investing. That's when you buy a property and you rent it out to other people. The rent minus all the expenses, whatever's left over is what you get to keep in passive income. It's the only form of real estate investing that actually allows you to make true passive income. If I kept getting more houses with more passive income, I could get financially free and then be able to control my life. So for you who's watching this at home, hey, why? Why do you want to invest in real estate? If it's because you want to generate a lot of money quickly, that's totally okay. But just know that renting is not for you, and instead you need to fix and flip. If you have no money at all and you want to start making money, then maybe wholesaling or becoming an agent is for you. But if you want passive income, then rental property investing, whether it's Airbnb or long-term, is for you. I wish I had a video like this just pop up on my recommendations to tell me to remember my why, because I lost 3 years just on this alone because I was so scared and bouncing back and forth between all the different strategies, not sure where to start. All right, so let's fast forward 3 years. I finally decided I wanted to do rental property investing because I wanted the passive income. I was clear on my strategy, but I still had a few more questions. You might have heard this before, but I was living in New York City. I couldn't afford anything there, but I knew I needed to get started investing somewhere. I started looking right outside the city and in other states totally across the country. Once again, I was confused, unsure, overwhelmed, stressed out, not sure where to start, because in order for me to decide, I had to come up with a data-driven process. So I was stuck. I was like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know any of these places. Every time I talked to a new investor, I was getting a different opinion on whether a place was good or not to invest in. For example, I would talk to one investor in Ewing, New Jersey, and they would talk about how they had a terrible tenant. And then you could speak to another investor, even at the same meetup, and they would tell you about how great Ewing was for cash flow. All the investors I spoke to, their responses were filled with emotion and bias, and nothing was filled with logic or data that helped make an actual decision. Now, this is where my second secret comes in. You want to base everything off of logic, not emotion. A lot of investors honestly just buy properties because the area is growing like crazy or there's tons of other people investing there. They don't use any logic to back up their decision. Now, you're probably like, what does logic look like? Let's break it down real quick. It's when you actually look at data points, real numbers that show you that an area is good to invest in because the population growth is improving, the price to rent ratio is low, crime rate is really low, a lot of houses on the market for you to be able to buy. Using actual data points is always better than just trusting one random investor you meet at a meetup or a friend or whoever it is to tell you that they've had a good time investing there or a bad time investing. You should not ever invest in an area just because someone says it's a good place to invest. You are pouring thousands of your own dollars and life savings into a property, and you're gonna bet everything on just someone guessing that it's a good idea for you to invest there? Make sure to use logic and data. Now, that doesn't mean when you're talking to an investor that you should just ignore their opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. If an investor tells you an area is good to invest, then go verify that information with data. On the same note, when we were talking about Ewing, New Jersey just before, I chose that area because the home prices were lower, the crime was not high, and it had a really good price to rent ratio for what I was trying to buy. The area had tons of properties that could cash flow right away. Cash flow is just the income you make from a rental property, subtracted all the expenses, and that's the profit in the end of the month. Now, I couldn't buy anything in New York City, obviously. I wasn't rich. And even if I did, my mortgage would cost way more than anything I could get in rent. So it would never be profitable and never cash flow. Before I started investing, I always thought that every house was just a good investment. Like if you just bought your neighbor's house, it's good. You're buying real estate, right? This could not be farther from the truth. In fact, almost every house you see, including your neighbors, is probably a bad investment. Only very few houses actually work. Too many people are buying houses and overpaying on houses that don't cash flow. This leads me to secret number 3. Always invest for cash flow. If you invest and you just buy a house because you think it's a great house and it's in a good location, you're setting yourself up to be broke. Again, cash flow is the passive income you make from a rental property. If you buy a property that does not cash flow, meaning it doesn't make you money, instead what you've bought yourself is a bill, not an investment, because you have to pay down the mortgage and all the costs every single month. Not to mention how much of a headache it'll be just to have someone in there. Sure, the home price might go over time, but you can't touch that money without borrowing it from the bank. And if you don't have a good financial situation because you're paying down all these bills on these houses, the bank will not give you money for the house. Instead, if you just buy a house for cash flow, you'll end up doing a few good things. First, you'll start being able to build up some extra income sources, which is always great. More income means you're buying yourself freedom. That's extra cash that you can use just in case if you want to leave your job for a few months, or it's extra cash that you can use to save up to buy more properties. You got to remember this because this is why we're doing this to begin with, to get that freedom. Second, if the housing market actually crashes, like let's say tomorrow, the cash flow is actually what makes you recession proof. Think about what happens in recessions just for 1 second. The home prices go down and people lose their jobs. If people lose their jobs, they can't get a mortgage. If they can't get a mortgage, they can't buy a house. And if they can't buy a house, they must rent. It's unfortunate when there's an economic collapse because a lot of people get hurt from it. But it's not a bad situation if you own a rental property because that's usually when you make more money. Second, if the home prices drop and you bought this property just betting on it going up, it's not an investment anymore. You already lost money. But let's say you're renting out the house and after all the expenses are paid, you're making $300 a month and the home price drops to 50% of what it was asked for. You're still okay because it doesn't matter. You don't need to sell. The house is making you $300 a month no matter what. Always, always invest for cash flow. It's one of the best ways to protect yourself against recessions. Okay, so knowing that I needed properties to cash flow, I picked Ewing, New Jersey, simply because it had low home prices and decent price to rent ratio, which means properties were cash flowing. Then I went to Zillow, looked at properties, and contacted an agent. I called him up and I asked him to send me properties that I wanted to look at. After I sent the first few properties, I tried to look at the numbers online just to see if the property would cash flow. I actually started to see a bunch that were cash flowing out of a lot that I looked at, but I had no clue which ones were the best ones to invest in. Immediately, I started going with all these emotional reasons why, like, oh, this property's close to TCNJ. That's the college nearby that I would have rented out the house to. Or I don't want that one because it's on a noisy street. But instead of doing that, I should have been focusing on the numbers, and that's secret number 4. When in doubt, use numbers. If you're unsure if an investment is going to be a good investment, use numbers. First, you're always going to want a specific amount of cash flow that the property is making every single month. I recommend that if you're a beginner, you start with minimum $150 per unit per month. You can do more, that's true, but I like to set the bar really low. This way you can get something going. But what if you have two properties that make you the same exact amount of money? Then you need to base it on cash return on investment. Cash on cash return on investment is found by taking the first year's pre-tax cash flow and divide it by how much it costed you to buy the house. So you can compare both properties' ROI and see which one had a higher ROI. An example would be, a lot of beginners reach out to me and say they're not sure if they should buy a 100K house that will make them $300 a month, or maybe buy a 400K Airbnb that will make them $1,000 a month. The 100K property has a higher ROI because of the amount of money you put down over the money you're making back. So now when you use ROI, you can tell which property is going to be the best one for you. When in doubt, use numbers to make a decision for you. So as I'm looking at properties, my calculations started off way off, okay? I'm talking like $1,000 a month off. Like I would look at a property and be like, yeah, that one's going to make me $1,000 a month. Everything's great. I was so wrong, but I kept at it. I would call up different companies to try to estimate expenses like home insurance and utilities and property management. And each time I did that, I went back and I analyzed more and more properties. And every time my calculation just got a little bit better. That leads you to my last tip for beginners, which is to take action daily. Dude, I wasted 4 years of my life just thinking about real estate investing and not doing anything. Now, don't get me wrong, you need some books and you need some information to help you start taking action. But you can't just get stuck learning, watching videos and never starting. The only way I was actually gonna get better is if I was putting myself out there and actually starting to look at deals. So I started looking at properties every day and analyzing them. Over time, I got better. I started making offers. And in the beginning, my offers were way off of what people wanted. And then eventually got one accepted. Every day, I spent about 30 minutes looking at properties, everything that came on the MLS in that area. This process never ends until you stop investing. I've used these tips to get 13 units in 4 states in less than 2 years. You can get there too, I promise. I believe in you if you made it this long in the video. Now it's just time for you to take what you just learned and go out and apply it. If you want to see exactly how much I'm making from my 5 rental properties, then click the video on screen and I'll catch you over there. I break down all of the numbers cent by cent.